Assalamu alaikum. It's really difficult to follow such an excellent act. And they weren't acts, they were actually activists who spoke before. And I'm just, first of all, just going to be in awe of the work that the guys who you've been hearing are doing out there. And I know most of them personally and, support them. First thing is prioritize. So my first, I think, congratulations is to those people who've pretty much said many of the things I was going to say in my speech. So I've had to turn a slightly different direction, but I think it's possibly going to be for the better. Alhamdulillah. I'm basically a political activist first and foremost, probably since the age of 14 or 15. I've run various organizations to try and not only awaken Muslims, but also to awaken myself, obviously, and to awaken non-Muslims. It's been a struggle of a lifetime already, really, as with many of the people who are here. I tried it through soft power, through arts and culture. I've experimented with it with festivals, all sorts of other Qawwali tours. We've done many other techniques of trying to get the message of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to the world. We've done it through social activities. We've done it through politics. We've done it through even allusions to mystical aspects. And I think this is where I want to focus. What the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, represents is a holistic model for all times. That we know. Somehow we seem to fail to project the holistic nature of who he is. I'm going to fail to do it within this 20 minutes. It's impossible to even attempt to do that. But what I'm going to try and do is focus on three things which generally the Muslims I've observed in Britain tend to downplay. And I think they're going to downplay them even more given the current climate of fear that's being perpetuated by all sorts of forces, everything from the state through to think tanks, through to insidious sort of people who say they're Muslims but aren't really Muslims. There are many attacks going on the society, but I'm going to focus on three things. The Prophet Muhammad's peace be on him, his mysticism, or the mystical aspects of the Prophet, peace be upon him, his morality, and his politics. Three very strange, if you like, aspects, which, quite frankly, many people within the Muslim fraternity try to downplay. The Prophet's politics, something we don't talk about that much. The Prophet's mystical aspect is something we don't talk that much about in many, many circles. In fact, people want to reject it. Prophet's morality, the akhlaqiyat, is also something that was downplayed. And I think this has been done inadvertently by those people who have leaned towards academia, jurisprudence, and the law. Now, my learned ulama who are in the room are not all just jurisprudence, they're also mystics. They're also teachers of morality, and they're also teachers of politics. But it's we, the people, as well, who are turning them and encouraging them to only give us jurisprudence and law. Jurisprudence and law is the end product of akhlaqiyat and morality and everything else that the Prophet did. It's not the starting point. First point that we as Muslims need to be aware of. Let's not underutilize our ulama. It's no good asking them about how to tie your shoelaces up and then not getting the answer for how you deal with prevent strategy in Britain if you didn't bother to ask the question. That's the first thing. Coming back to the mysticism, you see, all of the things that I've mentioned have nothing to do necessarily with books and learning from books. The mysticism, even the politics, even the morality. A lot of this I would argue, is a fitri aspect of human beings. It was certainly the fitra of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Because, he didn't study under anybody, as far as I recall. Most of the, if you like, manifesto that he launched was all the Holy Quran. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who was launching the manifesto for Islam. the manifesto that he picked up was very clear because it was a roadmap. It was a blueprint. It gave exactly what society was going to do at the micro and the macro level. But those things were happening hand in hand as far as I can observe. The micro and the macro aspects of the Holy Prophet Muhammad were not separate either. They were interconnected. Important point, but you see, I'll allude to this mysticism with something that Hazrat Abdul Muttalib noted about the Prophet in his childhood. He wasn't even 6 years old at this time. And he had a habit of, well, the sons of Hazrat Abdul Muttalib had a carpet outside under the shade of a tree, I believe, near the Kaaba. And it was a carpet that was left specifically for Hazrat Abdul Muttalib. That only he sat on it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, would, in his childhood, would wander over and he would sit on that carpet, just in that beautiful innocence of a child, any child. And Hazrat Muttalib would say, don't tell him not to sit on this carpet. The basira of Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, where did it come from? What was that? It wasn't something you learned from books, it was something he had. It was a basira which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives all of us. Whether we connect to it or not is really down to how honest we are and how sincere we are in our relationship with the divine. How honest we are in the progress we make, the steady forward progress towards the divine's desire for us to be optimal human beings. That mat was something immediately that didn't fit the logic of the sons of Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, but Hazrat Abdul Muttalib saw something deeper. And he said to Hazrat Abu Talib on his deathbed, he said, I'm entrusting Muhammad to you. Be like a mother to him. And he told him that he is going to be somebody of great status. What makes somebody recognize that in a child of 4 or 5 years old? This is not from books. I'm alluding to mysticism, the urafa and the irfan of those who have that depth of knowledge and that basira, and how we as a community underestimate them, and how we as a community still don't recognize them. And you see, when I link that mysticism to either morality or the politics of the Prophet Muhammad, if we were to move on to it, I've got some scripts which I'm going to go to. We can talk about criticizing socialism or fascism or the politics of the West, or we can talk about velayat-e-faqih, we can talk about the Sahaba, we can talk about the Khilafat. We have all these extraordinary concepts that we can look to in terms of our political, if you like, direction. They influence us. But for me, the Prophet's politics was rooted in his day-to-day living. The politics that he practiced was one of dealing with the affairs of the people as a governor, as a father, as a grandfather, in all sorts of ways, as a head of even a tribe at one stage. But he did it, I think, with this kind of intrinsic morality, an intrinsic set of virtues, which were not something that you can learn from books. You can't learn courage from books. You cannot learn even how to love from books. You can't learn most of those values we talk about, generosity. These things are learned through either watching the actions of somebody else who is a mentor, or they're contained within you and you allow them to come out, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nurtures them and makes them flower to the maximum. I'm going to go from this script, which I rarely do, but I will do the honor of this writer and what he was saying, because he alludes to a few of these incidents. He says the Prophet created a model of unity and solidarity in Medina centered on faith in monotheism, divine justice, and resurrection. The Holy Quran says in Ayah 103, Surah Al Imran, hold fast all together to Allah's cord and do not be divided into sects, or that's an abbreviation, and remember Allah's blessing upon you. When you were enemies, then He brought your hearts together. So you became brothers with His blessing. And it goes on to say that Islam manages to overcome all of these issues. But what did the Prophet fundamentally do? He was the finest embodiment of modesty and deeply abhorred arrogance and haughtiness. Almost all of his companions in the early days were poor and oppressed people, as he was the champion of the downtrodden and the defender of the deprived masses. A social revolutionary, an activist. He's a political activist, a political justice activist. We've disconnected that from him in our modern day living. In fact, we nowadays, people are scared to use the word political activist or political justice activist. It's almost frowned upon within our Muslim community. Why? Here, what I'm reading here, he was even in his childhood when he was supporting the Hilful Fadhul movement, the youth movement that basically wanted to create equal, if you like, trading rights and laws for the people who were being ripped off by the money-lending merchants who were dominating Mecca at that time. The Prophet, peace be upon him, in his youth, didn't start that movement. He joined it. He backed it, and he fought for it. He was in his youth doing these things. It goes on to further, I think, elucidate. It says, he was a champion of the downtrodden, the defender of the deprived masses. Prophet Muhammad lived in a modest house built of clay bricks, palm leaves, and trunks, despite being the head of the Islamic State. So, look, don't give me this excuse that we live in modern laps of luxury here, and it's okay because everybody else is doing it, it's cool, and we should aspire to more and more and more hyper-materialism. You can see that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was here even when he had wealth and power. He chose not to. Why? The wealthiest in Medina were extraordinarily wealthy. He didn't choose to live like them. He didn't even choose to live like the people in the middle. He chose to live as the poorest did. We can't even get close to that concept. What I'm trying to point out with this is that these simple traits go into then his politics, because his politics was one of compassion. The politics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is justice. Because when the Prophet was being compassionate to the point where he was forgiving these people, even the Bani Qurayza and the Jews who were constantly backstabbing him in Medina, he would forgive them 2 or 3 times. The Khazraj and I think it was the Bani Qurayza particularly, he let them off at least 2 times before the 3rd time during the Jang-e-Khandaq, when actually they tried to sow treason, and even then the Prophet didn't condemn them. He said, who do you want to be judged by? The law of Muhammad or the law of Moses? Which was I presume, their Torah, the law of the Talmud or whatever it was at that time. The Jews decided, the Bani Qurayza decided they wanted to be operating from their own law. Their own law stated that if you were treacherous and treasonous to the ruler that you were, if you like, paying obeisance to, all of your tribe should be, if you like, beheaded. Men, women, and children. That was their law. Prophet didn't want to implement that, even though they said they wanted it. Look at the compassion. Even though they'd been treacherous, virtually caused the death. What I'm trying to now do in my conclusion, I think, is to say that mysticism of the Prophet, people want to brush under the carpet that he split moons. People want to brush under the carpet that he was, from birth, he understood everything of the fitrah. He understood everything of the divine writ. People want to brush under the carpet that he was Nur, that he was of the original light, the Logos. Why? Why are we Muslims, first of all, suppressing the mysticism of the Prophet? Why are we suppressing the connection between his morality on a day-to-day basis, his modesty, his kindness, all those acts? How are we not translating that into, first of all, our lives, but also the politics that we have today? And then we as Muslims, in conclusion, because I could go on another half an hour to be honest on this, but I won't, obviously. But in conclusion, today, that mysticism, that morality, and that politics of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is something I think we need to spend an extraordinary amount of time analyzing far more deeply. Because without it, you do not have the toolkit to deal with the way that the state and the neoconservatives and the neoliberals and every other think tank that is trying to work out how to destroy you and your connection to real holistic Islam, you will not know how to defend yourselves against that. Because if you dilute Islam, if you take the politics away, if you take the mysticism away, if you take the morality away, and everything becomes relative morality, and relativism exists even within our religious morality, and if you take away the politics of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all that is left is, apolitical Islam, and if you take away, for instance, all of the mysticism, and we don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as perfect man, as insan-e kamil, what's left of Islam? And I'm telling you, in Britain, that's where some forces want us to go. I'm saying, wake up, let's have an awakening, let's re-evaluate the mysticism, the morality of and the politics of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and bring it back to Islam, because too many of our leaders, too many of our scholars, too many of our institutions are deliberately pushing these things aside. Jazakallah khair.